The Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. True, nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been and am, but why will you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened my senses, not destroyed, not dulled them. Above all else was the sense of hearing acute. I heard all things in the heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how healthily, how calmly I tell you the whole story. It is impossible to say how first the idea entered my brain, but once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object there was none. Passion there was none. I loved the old man. He had never wronged me. He had never given me insult. For his gold I had no desire. I think it was his eye. Yes, it was this. He had the eye of a vulture, a pale blue eye with a film over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold, and so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man, and thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing, but you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with what caution, with what foresight, with what dissimulation I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the week before I killed him. And every night about midnight, I turned the latch of his door and opened it, oh so gently. And then, when I had made an opening sufficient for my head, I put in a dark lantern all closed that no light shone out, and then I thrust in my head. Oh, you would have laughed to see how cunningly I thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head within the opening so far that I could see him as he lay upon his bed. Ha! Would a madman have been so wise as this? And then, when my head was well in the room, I undid the lantern cautiously. Oh, so cautiously, for the hinges creaked. I undid it just so much that a single thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights, every night just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, and so it was impossible to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. And every morning, when the day broke, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he has passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man indeed to suspect that every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my own powers, of my sagacity. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph. To think that there I was, opening the door little by little, and he not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heard me, for he moved on the bed suddenly as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no. His room was as black as pitch with the thick darkness, for the shutters were closed fastened through fear of robbers. And so I knew that he could not see the opening of the door, and I kept pushing it on steadily. I had my head in, and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the tin fastening, and the old man sprang up in bed, crying out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting up in bed listening, just as I have done night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a slight groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror. It was not the groan of pain or of grief. Oh, no. It was the low, stifled sound that arises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew the sound well. Many a night, just at midnight, when all the world slept, it has welled up from my own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since the first slight noise when he had turned in the bed. His fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them causeless, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor." Or, "It is merely a cricket which has made a single chirp." Yes, he had been trying to comfort himself with these suppositions, but he had found all in vain because death, in approaching him, had stalked with his black shadow before him and enveloped the victim. And it was the mournful influence of the unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, although he neither saw nor heard, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I had waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length a simple dim ray, like the thread of the spider, shot out from the crevice and fell upon the vulture eye. It was open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinctness, all a dull blue with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow in my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray as if by instinct, precisely upon the damned spot. And have I not told you, what you mistake for madness is but over-acuteness of the sense? Now, I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch makes when enveloped by cotton. I knew that sound well, too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of the drum stimulates a soldier into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless. I tried how steadily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder, I say, louder every moment. Do you mark me well? I have told you that I am nervous. So I am. And now, at the dead hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror. Yet, for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder. I thought the heart must burst, and now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped into the room. He shrieked once, only once. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor and pulled the heavy bed over him. I then smiled gaily to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the wall. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed and examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think me mad, you will think so no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned, and I worked hastily but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head and the arms and the legs. I then took up 3 planks from the flooring of the chamber and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatever. I had been far too wary for that. A tub had caught all. When I had made an end of these labors, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bell sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down to open it with a light heart, for what had I to fear? There entered 3 men who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by a neighbor during the night. Suspicion of foul play had been aroused. Information had been lodged at the police office, and they, the officers, had been deputed to search the premises. I smiled, for what had I to fear? I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I bade them search, and search well. I led them at length to his chamber, showed them his treasures secured and undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot beneath which reposed the corpse of my victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them. I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. But ere long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My head ached, and I fancied a ringing in my ears, but still they sat, and still they chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued and became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definiteness, until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I grew very pale, but I talked more fluently and with a heightened voice, yet the sound increased, and what could I do? It was a low, dull, quick sound, much such a sound as a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard it not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key and with violent gesticulations, but the noise steadily increased. Why would they not be gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to fury by the observations of the men, but the noise steadily increased. Oh, God, what could I do? I foamed, I raved, I swore. I swung the chair upon which I had been sitting and grated it upon the boards, but the noise arose over all and continually increased. It grew louder, 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 and still the men chatted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possibly they heard not? Almighty God, no, they heard, they suspected, they knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This I thought, and this I think, but anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this derision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now, again, hark, louder, 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 louder! Villains! I shrieked. Dissemble no more. I admit the deed. Tear up the planks here and here. It is the beating of his hideous heart. And thus ends Telltale Heart by Edgar Allan Poe. Well, that was actually a fun reading that I enjoyed doing, possibly because I put my heart into it. Right? Anyways. As always, thank you for listening. I appreciate it so much. If you did enjoy it, don't forget to click that like, comment if you want, and hit that subscribe button. Why not? You know, what's it gonna hurt? What's it gonna hurt? At 100 subscribers, I get to shorten my URL to something custom, and it's gonna be awesome. All right. Just a few things I want to bring up real quick. Last week, I did start something new. Last week, I created an account on Anchor.fm. And if you're not familiar, pardon me, I sometimes have a hard time speaking. I'm not editing that out. If you're not familiar with what Anchor.fm does, you upload your audio for podcasts to it, and they distribute it to different platforms such as Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts and Spotify. Yes, I am now on both Google Podcasts and Spotify. I'm still waiting on Apple. And there are a couple others that I have stories on now, thanks to Anchor.fm. I will leave that link down in the description. If you have noticed, my hair continues to get a little bit longer and longer and longer every week. Let me tell you something. It is driving me absolutely bonkers. However, it is not something that I can cut. See what I mean? It's at a horrible length right now. It's driving me insane. Over on Twitch, where I stream on Thursday nights, Friday nights, and Saturday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern. you should definitely stop by and give me a follow and hang out. We really enjoy sitting around and talking. I have a long-term charity goal, 50 subscribers a month, and I won't cut my hair. Yeah. Yep, that's correct. Not cutting my hair. 50 subscribers a month. And when I say long term, I'm thinking a year to a year and a half of growing out my hair to a point where I can cut off 12 inches of it at least to donate it to charity. I have a charity in mind. They do not charge anybody for those wigs. I will have to look up the name, and I will drop a link down in the description to them. And it's just something that I want to do, right? Also, don't forget about Extra Life. Now, we have a couple of new incentives that are based on Phasmophobia. Okay, so Ron Martz Gaming is one of the guys I play with on Saturday nights over at Twitch. And he has come up with an idea for a little bit of a mini game that is definitely interesting. You'll have to stop by the stream to find out what it is, but a $10 donation to my Extra Life campaign, which the link again will be down in the description, will force us to play this mini game where two of us stay in the truck and two of us go into the building with no flashlights. Let me tell you, it's fun. $25 donations will result in us having to go into the building with no flashlights, except it's all four of us. Whoever is in the game comes with me. It is fun. We accidentally did that one night. We went into the prison. We loaded up the prison, got in there. We were picking up our gear to go inside and realized we forgot to bring flashlights. We actually successfully figured out the ghost. Nobody died, and we made it out. So, you know, let's make it even more fun, right? Right? At any rate, we do have, or I do have, a goal of $5,000 for Extra Life this year, and we are currently at $444 at this very point in time. And I am really, I'm going to say I am driven to hit that goal for this year. I will be scheduling at least 2 Extra Life streams. They'll probably be between 8 and 12 hours long. However, you don't have to be there that day, and anything you can contribute is absolutely appreciated. Every dollar helps. Every dollar does go to Roanoke Carilion Children's Hospital in Roanoke, Virginia, where it is actually the only children's hospital in this area of my state, in this region of my state. They've been hit hard by COVID over the last year. They've had to shift supplies around. Bed space in hospitals is at a premium. And I have to say that any help you can possibly muster will be so greatly, greatly appreciated. Here is where I'm going to, do the regular end of things spiel, whatever. There should be a subscribe button there, an Edgar Allan Poe playlist over there. Don't forget to like, comment, please, and subscribe. And I will see you guys on stream, and I'll see you here next week. Y'all have a good one.